that we have Rabbi Levine back, which is good news. And the second part of that good news is tonight is a very important evening because he's actually releasing his 7th CD. And we wish him much luck with that. If anybody wants to find the CD, you can go to his website, baruchlevine.com. And he did not pay me to make that announcement. So we're very excited about that.
He paid me to pay you.
What did you say?
He paid me to pay you.
And if you listen very carefully on which track will we find Aaron Saberman's voice over there?
I think it's... Aaron, which one is it?
You gotta know this off the cuff.
Five and
Tracks 5. Okay, terrific. So we have a bit of a trend here because after the election, we were able to have Mrs. Miller over here on a Tuesday night. And when we have a release party, we have Rabbi Levine here on a Tuesday night. Anybody that wants to arrange to have an after party can be in touch. Here's a great place. I wanted to use this opportunity to share with you a thought that is one of my favorite, for me personally, it's something that is very meaningful to me, and it comes out of this week's Parsha. The Torah tells us that Jacob was left alone, and because he was left alone, he ended up fighting with the angel of Esav. And the question is, why was he left alone? So the Gemara says, the Talmud tells us, that Jacob had finished transferring all of his possessions across the river. He sent most of his things, and behind him he had left, his small jugs. And he needed to get his small jugs, so he went back across the river, and that's where he was left alone. And the question is that Jacob, as we know from the previous parsha, was very, very wealthy. And he had already sent most of his possessions, his cattle, etc. What was so important to him about his small jugs that he decided to go all the way back across the river to get him? Why couldn't he have just said, I forgot them there, and I'll make do without them? So the Talmud tells us that we see from here that righteous people care more about their possessions than they do care about their own bodies. And the reason is because they don't steal. So the question is, firstly, what does it mean that righteous people care more about their possessions than their own bodies? If you go into Jerusalem and you find some of the big tzaddikim, some of the righteous people, they seem to be living in abject poverty. They don't seem to care so much about their worldly possessions. That's A. What does it mean that they care so much about their money? And secondly, it seems to be that we mix something in that doesn't belong. The reason why they care so much about their things is because they don't steal. It would seem that there's two different things going here. They also don't steal. Why are we mixing in the fact that they don't steal for the reason why they care so much about their things? So the answer is that the two things are really not a contradiction whatsoever. Righteous people are not here for their worldly possessions. They are not chasing money at all. They believe that whatever they have comes from God, and whatever they need, they will get from God. And that's the reason, by the way, why they don't need to steal. Since God didn't give it to them, so they don't try and get it from other places. But because they don't steal, because they don't take things that shouldn't be theirs, because they believe that everything they have comes from God, so that means that they know that God gave it to them, and there was an absolute purpose for that. So it works really the other way around, and it goes like this. Because they have only things that came from God, they know there was a clear and direct purpose, a mission for every single little thing that they have. If God gave Jacob small jugs, Jacob knew that in order for him to fulfill his mission in the world, there was some sort of use that he had to make from those jugs. So of course he had to go back, because not going back for those jugs meant that he was going to be missing an essential part of his purpose in life. And the reason why I think this is such an important lesson is because it doesn't just work that way for material things necessarily. We all have different talents, we all have different abilities, we all have different opportunities that God gives us. And we have to realize that if we have that opportunity, it becomes a responsibility. God gave it to us for a reason. We have to treasure it. And if we do not use it, then we are not going to be fulfilling our mission. But on the opposite, if we do make sure to take care of every single opportunity, then we know that we will fulfill our mission that God has given us. We hope everybody has a wonderful week. And we look forward to next week, God willing.
Oh, yeah.